Some years ago, when I was a student, I was made present of a return ticket to America, and I used this as a basis to get myself a J1 visa to help pay my fees. And I flew from Dublin to New York and then by Greyhound to Atlantic City, where I presented myself at the hotel nominated on the employment letter, only to find that the job had been promised to many others. The agency had simply taken the money and run. So here I was on a rainy night, 3,500 miles away from home, with $23 in my pocket and no plan, no job, no room. I must have looked somewhat crestfallen because the hotel receptionist took a look at me and said, "I can give you a spare room for tonight, but you'd better be gone by 7 o'clock in the morning or the boss will raise hell and you might find yourself talking to the local police force." Now, I didn't want to extend my American contacts that early in my trip, so I took myself to the room and awoke terrified at 6:30 and evacuated before anybody was the wiser. I tucked into a substantial breakfast for the day ahead, realizing that here I was, thousands of miles away from home, no job, and 2 months before the next plane out. I remember starting at one end of the famous boardwalk in Atlantic City and looking at the thousands of people milling there and saying, somewhere out there is a place for me to stay and somewhere out there is a job. And I can't stop walking until I've got both. And it took hours of rejection and shaking heads and so forth, before I got an employer who recognized my qualifications and got proof of my age and said, yes, I can give you a job as an assistant bartender. The rate was good. And having bagged the job, it was relatively easy to get a hotel room in one of these student hotels. And when my back is to the wall, I often think of that day in Atlantic City where there was one objective for the day, and it was not negotiable. I could not let the sun set on my unemployment, so I had to deliver. And I often think of that when I'm up against it, and I think, well, if I could hack it that day in Atlantic City so many years ago, we might have a chance now. I hope you find this useful if ever you find yourself in a similar situation.